All right, public comment will occur. Public comment will occur during the public comment portion of the meeting and is done via raising your hand remotely or in person. During public comment, once acknowledged, please state your name and ward so that it can be included in the minutes, and please limit your time to 3 minutes. Public comment is governed by policy BEDH. Are there any additions or deletions from the agenda?
There is not.
Okay. So we will open the floor up for public comment. Is there any public comment in the appear to be?
There is none online.
Okay, we will close it for now and come back to it. Which brings us to our student reports. Nora.
Hello, everyone. So as you may know, we just had prom. It went really well. It was at the Hilton Inn this year, so and everyone really enjoyed it. I've got really good feedback. Student council did as well. We had a visit from some school board members, and we talked about making the vision of grad standards more accessible to integrate it into students' daily experience from kindergarten through senior year. Also inviting a school board member to attend a student council meeting once a month to improve communication collaboration might be an option for next year. Creating an advisory board within student council composed of committee heads and the other student representative. We're also exploring a potential connection between the advisory board and also the JCOM board because we're going to integrate that into student council next year, hopefully. And then especially if it relates to the restorative justice efforts. And then speaking of the restorative justice efforts, admission will be bringing proposed changes related to the restorative justice to the handbook committee very soon. These are currently in the approval process for implementation for school next year. And then this is also, I believe, my final student report, so before I graduate. So I just wanted to say that I'm incredibly grateful for this opportunity and having this role, and it's been a pleasure working with all of you, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Nora. We appreciate your reports and your thoroughness. Does anybody have any questions for Nora? Congratulations.
Thank you.
On finishing. Right, we appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Have a nice summer.
Thanks, you too. All right. Correspondence.
There are none.
Okay, great. All right, that brings us to our consent agenda. We need a motion to public minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the public minutes from May 5th.
Seconded.
Okay, moved by John, second by Richard. This is for the emergency board meeting that we had. Are there any deletions to those? Okay. All those in favor? And then motion for the public minutes from April 23rd.
I'll make a motion to approve the public minutes from April 23rd.
Okay, motion by John, second by Richard. Are there any revisions for those minutes?
Under 4, there's a sentence there, the senior tea and senior lunch should be are instead of and. And I wasn't sure on page 5 at the very top, nurse's office. I was trying to figure out if that was grammatically correct, but I think it is. And I think that's it.
Anybody else have any? Okay, so as amended. All right, all those in favor of accepting them as amended? Great, and then that brings us to nominations. Renominations. All of mine out of the way. We need a motion to accept them.
I'll make a motion to approve the renominations for May 14th, 2025.
Okay, can I get a second? Okay, motion by John, second by Richard. Are there any questions? All right, great. Then all those in favor? Okay. Next, we are at the superintendent update. Separately?
I think it was covered under
We did all of
the
them.
motion.
Yeah, they do. Thank you, though.
All right, I'm going to start with the strategic plan presentation. So I'm going to have Tyler cue that up. And I'm going to invite Dr. Katie Wilson from 2Rev, who has been working with us, up to sit there and help field questions. So I sent you folks the detailed action plan for the strategic plan and the strategic plan last Friday, and I included it here. So tonight, I'm just going to do a brief overview of how we got to this point, and then go do broad strokes over the plan, and then give you guys an opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback. All right. So why did we engage in the strategic plan process? When I came to this board to ask about that, I thought it was really important that we would have a community-based strategic plan and a roadmap for the next 3 years. Through this process, we're able to develop a shared vision and clarified our priorities and our strategies. Our goal of there was to create a 3-year strategic plan, which was based on community input, and that focuses on coherence and guides our decisions in the future. Today, we are going to share this working draft of the strategic plan for the school district, and as a reminder, the full plan will go back to this board on June 11th for a vote. So I just want to talk a little bit about the process. First, I'd like to thank the members from this board who participated in the community planning group. We started out by sending feedback back in December and collecting data. We've had over 300 community voices, which includes students, parents, community members, and faculty that were included in the data that we looked at. We had 27 individuals on this community planning group. We had community representation, school staff, administrators, board members, and parents as well. As I mentioned before, we had 5 meetings from January through April. So this was about gathering data, and boy, did we have a lot of data to gather. So lots of voices, and that really started that next group, the next work of our group. So we have a process overview that I thought would be helpful. So first, we started, what should Lebanon learners be able to do when they graduate? We then looked at what is getting in the way of that? What are the barriers, and how can they be mitigated? We started to talk about what best ideas for leveraging assets. We looked at identifying success measures. We had to prioritize. We came up with a draft strategic plan. We've kept going back to that. In upcoming slides, we had a lot of goals and a lot of passion with this. So we wanted to be able to narrow this down to make it manageable and to really reflect the needs of our students and the voices of our community. So we're in the process now of gathering feedback. We just had a community listening session. Today, Lil and I went to the student council and were able to share some ideas with them. And then we'll be continuing to get feedback from our faculty and community members. So I will share this out with the community to get feedback as well. All right, next slide. Draft plan overview. All right, so we have a vision of a graduate. This vision of a graduate, the first 3 blocks were created before the pandemic. And it was done, led by the high school, but really collecting voices from the K-12 perspective. As we know, and from feedback, is that we have this vision of a graduate, although it's not really embedded within our curricular work. Talking to students today, some of them didn't know what it was. So we started to look at that to see if this was still relevant. And kudos to the group that created this original vision of a graduate. Those first 3 categories still resonated, and from the data, we felt they were still important for our students to be able to know and be able to do. So being an effective collaborator and communicator, a critical and creative thinker, a responsible and local citizen. And then through the data, we came out and really determined that we needed this fourth column being an empathetic and resilient learner. So we've really felt that those are those skills that we want all of our graduates to be able to know and do. As I talked about, this was a K-12 perspective, but this vision of a graduate really kind of laid within the work of the high school, within accreditation. What we said as a community planning group and heard from our community and our teachers and our administrators, this work really needs to start in kindergarten. We need to start talking about critical thinking in kindergarten, creativity, communication, and really embed that within our learning process. Next slide. So where we started, we had 3 areas that we looked at. We looked at instruction and assessment. We talked about student choice. We talked about curriculum. We talked about our assessment practices, professional learning for our teachers. We started to look at systems and structures, so organizational, so time and space. We talked about school start times. We had the SAU building space as an area to discuss. Centering on learner needs, how to make sure our structures are focused as what is best for students, and resource allocation. And then finally, we started to look at culture, climate, and mindset. So within that, we talked about student engagement, community building, emotional well-being, and it came up in one of our earlier iterations is resistance to change. As I said before, next slide, lots of information came up and it was time to prioritize. So Leah Whalen, our principal at Hanover Street, through the community planning group, said something that resonated with us. If everything is important, nothing is important. So we really need to focus and prioritize what we wanted to accomplish in this next 3 years. When we were doing these considerations, we looked at cost, knowing that there's not an infinite budget for everything that we want to do. We needed to know about time and effort. So we have existing resources now. How can we build upon what we have without making something else go awry, like not prioritizing something else? We needed to consider policy and permission. So do we have the policies in our policy governance manual that allows us to do this? What is the potential impact? We want to make sure the decisions that we are making have the biggest impact for our students, and if there was any risks. So as we got to identify our priorities, we started with 14 goals. And I think we had over hundreds of ideas from there. So we had a couple of sessions of just looking at the data over and over again and trying to prioritize and make sense and group things together that were like ideas. We got it down to 8 goals, and then right now we're settling at 6 potential goals for the strategic plan. Next slide. So thank you, Tyler. So we have these 4 areas: grow our students. In there, we embedded the vision of a graduate. We also want to increase learner-centered approaches and creative environment that supports emotional well-being. Our next area is grow our educators. So we have a great professional learning system that we have been building over the last few years. We want to continue with that and build in supports for our teachers so they can increase achievement, innovation, and high engagement in our learning process. We have another goal of growing our systems. This is where our operational decisions are going to lie. So anything that we decide we should do should be in the lens of student-centeredness and what we want for our students. And finally, growing our family and community partnerships. So effectively communicating to enhance partnerships among schools, families, and with the greater Lebanon community. We've talked about this before. There's never enough communication, and finding the right way to communicate and different ways of communication as well. The next couple of slides have some of our strategies there. I'm not going to go through these all in detail because you have the full embedded action plan that was sent to you last week. But again, it's really some of our strategies is just assessing and communicating the Lebanon vision of a graduate. We have this. How can we embed this in the work that we're doing so it's not something new? It's not another class that you have to take for the vision of a graduate, but it's embedded within our curriculum. Because we know even at our earliest learners in kindergarten all the way up through middle and high school, they are being creative, they are critically thinking, we are teaching empathy and resiliency. I think we just need to be more intentional through that increasing our use of learner-centered practices, looking at other partnerships and resources for our students. One of the themes that came out through the community planning group was supporting transitions, and we spent a lot of time on this. So the transitions from preschool to elementary, elementary to middle, middle to high school and beyond, and then those transitions for those students joining us in 7th grade from Grantham and 9th grade in Plainfield. So we had some detailed action steps that I'm pretty excited about within there that I think could be really beneficial. And then we heard today from some of our community members too of ideas what they have to better the experience from the parent side. As I mentioned before, Karen and her team has done a great job on the professional development. We revised our professional learning plan this year, and we have a new teacher evaluation tool. So we have great 2 systems in place that we are going to leverage and build upon. For us growing our systems, obviously continuing to manage our financial and operation plans effectively, and that includes our building CIPs. That's all listed within this document that was sent, action plans. And everything you'll see on here tonight, it says it's draft. It's a draft for a reason, because we want feedback from you. We want to know what we're missing. Are there gaps? One of the pieces throughout this process too, and I've talked about this the last time, is that we've really ever talked about our adult education program. And adult education is a part of the Lebanon School District. So bringing that into the loop and making sure that's being communicated and strengthening as we go forward. Again, growing our family and community partnerships, making sure we're effectively communicating with the Lebanon community, sharing important information as we approve the strategic plan, and then as we meet our benchmarks, I think is going to be really important. We'd love to enhance our caregiver and family involvement in the schools. And again, one of the board goals is supporting innovative partnerships for non-traditional curricular opportunities, such as our Take Flight and our ELL programs. So achieving the goals, before I turn it over for feedback, I just want us to think about that. And first of all, I want to thank the community planning group, thank Katie and Rod, who is another one of our partners who spent the time with us. They told us that they don't have the answer. They're just there to help provide the structure. So this really is our voices from our Lebanon community. This is what people are excited about, so I'm excited, but I also know there may be opportunities for feedback and grows in this area. So I guess if we move closer to realizing the vision of a graduate, what would you expect to see and hear in our board meetings? How would you know that as a district we were being successful? I think let's start there.
Thank you very much for all of this information and all the work that's gone into it, to everybody who's involved. So I guess I want to ask a question about the question. The vision of a graduate is obviously woven throughout the materials, and it sounds like that's felt like a very valuable centering sort of part of this, which is great. The part of it that pulls me up a little bit short, to be honest, is the fact that I think it makes the educational process sound like it is like the kid's a package, when they, like, what did we achieve our package on, graduation day? Did we, did we get what we wanted after 12 years of investment or whatever? And I think the challenge with that is that, for those of us with young kids, for example, I don't know that that's a long ways away. So I think it can feel a little bit like, does it have to be the vision of a graduate? Can it just be a vision of a student, a vision of a person at wherever they are, rather than sort of like when they finally leave, are they this thing? More like, are we consistently every year, every day working to have our student, I think it's clear to me that that's the intention of the language, but I think that the vision of a graduate phrase kind
Maybe
of
a vision of a learner
Vision of a
Runner,
student,
student, yeah.
something. I think, I mean, I get that it's fine, but I think that holds me up a little bit, because I think, like, I could move someday. Like, I may not live here when my kids graduate, but it doesn't make what, like, my involvement in their educational process and their participation in the schools now until whenever they leave any less important. And so I think that sort of pitching it as a 12-year process or something feels a little bit like it loses sight, especially of the much younger kids. So I think vision of a graduate, I can see how it came out of the high school the high school work, and I think it sounds super relevant and important there. It feels a little off-putting as a parent of elementary students.
I think too, just as a business piece, part of the accreditation for the high school requires that you have something that's called a vision of a graduate.
Yeah.
So we can work with that language and adjust the language, because I think as long as we have the intent, I think your point is well taken. So there's definitely language that we can fiddle
But I
with.
think it is also functionally a little different
Yeah,
in the
no, I
sense
agree.
that, like, with elementary kids, they're still real fuzzy in terms of what they are. Like, and so I think that it's harder to think of them as, like, are we making sure that they get packaged in the right way or whatever. So I think that pulls me up a little bit in terms of what I would expect to see and hear in the schools and in the board meetings. I don't know, because it does feel like I having written strategic plans before, I am very familiar with the way that you use the language that feels like it defines for the people who have been involved in it what it doesn't say. But I think that, like, when you come to it relatively fresh, it's a lot less clear about what this doesn't include. So I think that was sort of the part that came to me in reading it. I was sort of aligned with Bill Whelan's comment of, like, it's very unclear to me what is not important based on this strategic, like, what we are sort of deliberately kind of saying is, and I get that that's not a thing we would talk about necessarily very much in a strategic plan, but I think that there is, specifics can help, like specific goals. The goals still, a lot of, like, some of the goals are specific, but a lot of them are a little bit fuzzy. There's a lot of, like, we'll have an effective operational management of our stuff. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And so I think this is not me I'm saying more specificity around those things will help sort of alleviate the feeling of being a little bit like, sounds great.
And I think part of that too is that some of that language was left purposefully, not vague, but purposefully, like, not limiting, because we wanted people to say in year one, define what that means, right? As opposed to just, like, us coming in and saying, we want it to mean this, to have the people who are assigned these things to actually define it for themselves. So I think part of that is, like, one of the things that I would expect to see at the end of year one is kind of exactly what you're talking about, is a much more detail in some of these areas, because now that we've thought about it and we've decided, as these communities have decided what they want to do, I think that's what I would expect to see.
And I think that, like, again, I think I'm more trying to point out that, like, how this feels like coming at it fresh rather than any sort of, like, I think the most important part of a strategic planning process is the conversations that take place around it, truthfully. The document is going to live and change, whatever. So I respect that totally. But when I look at a strategic planning document, one of the things I would hope to feel is a greater sense of how you would answer questions that are coming up for me. So, for example, when I think about reading today about AI in schools, AI being used in educational settings, and that's actually potentially part of the federal government's push, is that should be a lot more. It's unclear to me how the goals and sort of philosophies that are being sort of alluded to here, how we as a district would respond to those kinds of big changes coming through. And I think that's what I would be looking for. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to make it in there, but some sense of, like, how are we going to respond to things that are going to come up?
actually wanted just to clarify, one of the things as we talk about this vision of a graduate part of the action step is to, what does it look like in elementary school? What does it look like in kindergarten? Because those success indicators are going to be different, and we're going to be building upon them. So, at the end of elementary school, what do we expect? But I think sometimes we assume that the students can do all of this, and we are teaching it, but I think this document helps us be more intentional about that, and that it's important to us that we want our students to be able to do that. But I agree, and I think one of the things too that Turev has done is kept all of these wonderful ideas as well in a bank of stuff, because what I envision too is like we may be moving on some of the things, and then education is changing, right? And we are going to need to be nimble, but that's why there's some leeway for us to be able to kind of adjust and put things in and bring forward if we were to get an AI mandate and things like that.
And I think one thing too, and sort of Amy's guidance all along since she came, is that the focus for the district, focus for Amy, but now the focus for the whole, is to look at everything as, how is this impacting students? Have a student-centered lens, so that becomes sort of the philosophy. Is this positively impacting students? Is this what we want our students to engage with? And so I think when we come to something like AI or whatever the next thing is, right? The cell phone policy, whatever the next big thing is sort of looking at it through the lens of students, as opposed to looking at it through the lens of like, well, what's good from a logistical standpoint, or what's good, like centering students, and then we answer all those other questions afterwards. That was sort of one of the conversations that came up again and again and again, is sort of thinking about centering. You gonna say something? Sorry.
Oh, no, is it different? Another question.
Oh, okay.
Can I follow up on that student thing before we bounce off? Amy, can you speak more to what you experienced whenever you and Lil shared some of the things with student council, what student-centered reception or even student guidance within the group felt like their vision for what making us more student-centered might be?
Today we heard from Nora, when she spoke a little bit about it today, but they were excited to have a student voice in here. And if you look at within the action steps, we do have the student council. There's some responsibilities for them that we're asking for them to. So we talked about increasing our ambassador programs for new students. We've talked about having a superintendent advisory committee, and then we talked about having administration go to student council twice a month. From our conversations, they suggested, hey, we would like for the superintendent and the board chair to come twice a month to be able to collaborate and have more information too. So
We're gonna see how many times we go, but
sometimes
we're very excited about it.
yeah, if we could, maybe once, but it was pretty exciting. And as you heard from Nora too, is that within their student council, they have they're starting to be able to collaborate and come to ideas around, I guess, programs like their JCOM and restorative justice. So there's a lot more student-driven activities going on with the high school, which I think we need to support and leverage. We have a student school board rep, which is great, but our students are busy, so oftentimes we're not getting their voice within policy and stuff like that. I talked about we moved our EC committee to the school day, so there may be times where we can engage them when we're talking about all of our educational policies that are going to be coming up in the next few months.
And they've been very, as a whole, already behind the scenes, as this process has been happening, they have been doing a lot of their own questioning of policies, plans, and we've talked about this in a little bit, we've talked about it in other places. They're really sort of an activist council right now. They're going to have elections, so we'll see what happens next year, but they are very smart. And sitting in that room, I kept thinking, this is actually, they have better ideas than we know, because we can't imagine the ideas that they had. And so as we sort of passed the information around, they came up with ideas really quickly, and they were like, I'm going to read it and come up with more ideas. Great, that's what we want to see. So we also want to engage with LMS Student Council at some point, and really try and bring those in as much as possible, which is good.
At one point, earlier this year, we were discussing the possibility of having a student rep on the school board.
Right, so we talked to them about that.
And
It's a little bit challenging because of scheduling, but one thing that we can do is change our structure so that we talk about things that we want student voice specifically, have those earlier in the meeting,
Right,
away.
okay.
We sort of change around our things so that we can have students participating, and they were very excited about that too.
That's great.
So,
I love that. Okay, cool.
so yeah, they've got some ideas, and we don't even know the extent of their ideas yet.
That's clarifying, thank you.
Richard, you were going to say
Yeah, so I notice, and I love the success indicators in the portrait aligned section. In the detailed action plans section, are we planning on having success indicators for the action steps? So like, develop understanding among families, students, and staff about the importance of the vision of graduate skills. How will we know when we have done that? Well, is there going to be a success indicator for that particular action? When we'll know that we've done that?
That's a good question, a good point. I think where it is right now, and Katie can correct me, but I think where it is right now is that, especially for those year one things, we're letting the groups have some leeway with what it is that they want, how they want to do that. But I would expect that, yes, we would get back, Amy would get back information from all those groups, and then eventually she's going to be the one who's reporting it back to us. So
maybe we maybe included in the plan, we could have a halfway through year one,
yeah, like a
develop
progress check.
KPIs for the year one actions, so that we know whether we're getting them done.
I think that was good, yeah. And I know in the previous strategic plan, they did like a mid-year report out and an end-of-year report out, and we can do that as well. And, I think we'll flesh some of these things as we go into year one, and just making sure that we're doing everything that we said we would do and giving that, but some of it may obviously take more time, and then, to communicate back with you folks and, to be able to adjust.
Go ahead.
I guess, so I also really appreciate the fact that there is a goal, and then there is possible success indicators, possible strategies. I really appreciate that. One thing that I would love to see more of is more really measurable, and by measurable, I'm not thinking of, what I'm thinking of is things like percentage of budget spent on this, percentage of classroom hours spent on this, rather than, I guess, I sort of look at this as having two parts. Part of it is sort of the superintendents and the administrators, where this is really for you guys. So that part, I feel like whatever the goals are that you need and whatever indicators you need to feel like you're kind of going in the direction you want to go, I don't need to agree with them necessarily, because they're about you and how you do your job, and so that's fine. But then there's another part that is higher level than that, where it does feel like the board has a greater role, and I think that things like sort of me where the committees maybe are a little bit, that's where the committees and the administrators meet up. So I would think about how much money are we spending on these? Each year, what percentage of our budget is going towards it? What percentage of teacher learning time is things that we actually measure as a board and look at year over year. Maybe the committees can think a little bit about that, about things that they would want to see. But I do worry that when we have a lot of indicators that feel like, from our perspective, you can kind of survey it and say, look, we're doing this, but that doesn't necessarily tell us a quantity. How much is changing? Just because we had one of this kind of project last year, now we have two. Is that really a big improvement? So I think that maybe it would, but it doesn't actually, I wouldn't say that speaks very well to what the goal, not necessarily that huge. I did note that outdoor learning is in here as a thing that we would be calling out, communicating about our successes with, and I think that I could in theory communicate about our successes in outdoor learning, but I'm not sure that that's empirically based, sort of based on we were doing this, now we're doing this. How empirical is that? So, between now and June, it's hard to see, June 11th, it's hard to see how that will shift, but.
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I was anticipating that those measurables, many of them would be happening when these groups are deciding what they're going to do, put
So that
forth
may
their
come
plan.
sort of
Right.
at a few,
Like
yeah,
as-
so,
right.
so perhaps the way to think about it is like continuing to, as we refine, as the administration and the superintendent refine these, thinking about prioritizing possible success indicators that
Or measurable, yeah.
that the board can also measure in a way that we're looking at it, if that makes sense. So I think like just keeping that in mind as we go through, I would like to do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think when you see out here, we struggle too, because there's lots of things that we can survey, but we over-survey our community. So we have to be really strategic about what we're asking. So I think, you know, those are the follow-ups that we can have with kind of the owners and the teams that be able to look at this, and as we kind of move forward with that too. And if there's specific indicators like, you know, how much money are we spending on teacher learning and how much time, we can report that stuff out as well.
Yeah, you were
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think a lot of this is qualitative data, so it is data. And it sounds like you're wanting it to be a little more quantitative, and I think it's fair to let the administrators and the people making these plans decide the quantities and help provide that qualitative data, or quantitative data. I feel like that would be more, if that makes sense to you.
I'm not
Giving
sure,
me a look.
I'm not sure I understand.
So this is, you want quantities, you want numbers, measurables, right? So just saying that we have improved this and increased this quality, you want a number attached to it.
I think it's important to think about which kind of data we're looking at when, I guess. Like I'm never been a fan of like using numbers when numbers are not what's necessary. Like how do you measure student well-being? Beats the heck out of me. I
Right.
mean, I think, yeah, sure, there's ways and we come up with them, but it's always gonna be a little fuzzy, that's fine.
Yeah.
But what the board does, we control spending, and we control sort of hirings, and we control, to some extent, and we control policy. Those are the things that the board controls. And so I think that to the extent that this is largely an like a portion of this is sort of administrator goals, strategy, et cetera, I think, yay, great, go forth, like, seems like a great process, well done. And to the extent that the board does play a weird sideways, like, portion of that.
Well, oversight.
I think oversight, oversight, but also participation. We're also
Really,
parents-
oversight is what we're supposed to do.
Well, but
That's
but we're also like community. We do play multiple roles. Nobody here doesn't have a kid in the school. I think. So I think that it's a weird side. Yes, oversight, but I think that also, in order for it to be really effective, we would want to know how what we do on the board, controlling the budget, controlling things that we control, is that working with this? Is that sort of, are we making decisions that are kind of supporting what you guys are doing? Or I think that, and data is largely where I think that numbers is partly where that would come in. So, I mean, like, policy is a little, I think you could certainly say, like, look, these are the policies we worked on. You could also definitely say budget and things like that that's a big part of what we do.
Right, so I think that some of those numbers and some of that information is going to become immediately relevant in our upcoming budget discussions, right? Because we're going to say, okay, if we are supporting professional development, for instance, are we giving enough money in the budget for those things, right?
Yeah.
If we are, but again, we're going to be presented with the budgets from the administrators, so we have to make sure that that is priority is that their priority is moving through the budget and coming to us, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that is definitely when our lens needs to be in our mind the whole time that we're doing budget season as well.
And perhaps in the administrators' minds when they come to
Yeah,
communicate
of
the
course.
budget to us, to be able to say, like, if these are the goals, then let's also
Yeah.
make sure that how we're talking about our budgets is aligned with this. So if we're thinking about, like, hey, we want to make sure that we're prioritizing some of these skills in the,
Yeah, no,
yes.
yeah.
I think
makes sense.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also see, like, and I know we have a tight timeline with June 11th. June 18th, we'll probably start talking about board goals. And so you guys will have this document to then develop your board goals for next year, which hopefully would be aligned to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve.
Other questions, observations?
If I were to go back to the original question on the slide, what would success of this mean? I really want to boost up the teacher learning. I think that as someone who's been through education, the idea that we are empowering our teachers at that level to continue to grow instead of stagnation is going to have a massive impact on our students just immediately. So I really want to commend that goal and say that that's an exciting goal to see. I would say I am curious to learn more about the desire with Goal 6 because it feels a little bit broad in what in the actual year outline of what that is. So Goal 6, effectively communicate to enhance partnerships among schools, families, and the wider community. I do think increased communication makes sense, but also under this umbrella means a social media intern that's potentially a student. I'm just kind of curious of what the goal of social media is in this. What's the ideal shift for communications?
One of the things that we actually talked to the students with, and actually through just through Director of Communications in that role, is being able to leverage different types of medium for communication. So when we did our community survey of our community, communication survey from our community, is that some people are using Facebook, Instagram. We know there are other platforms that can reach different populations. We had discussed as this potential idea is that going back to the area of transitions too, is if students could help make quick videos about like what to prepare for high school and what pick or LMS, like how do you pick out your schedule in your classes? So being able to leverage different things. Again, these are draft action steps, the ones that sort of kind of rose up. They'll still be sort of fleshed out as we get feedback from people. I will update you tonight. I do have a new Director of Communications and Communications that's starting July 7th, which I'm really excited about, and to be able to kind of give him this strategic plan and get his ideas as well, is to enhance the communication within the district. So we know we have our new website, and so how can we coordinate that? And with our new website, our newsletter should be streaming on there. So the same information is being shared out. So we heard about it tonight. Sometimes we're communicating information, but different people are communicating it, and the message may be a little different. So making sure everything is coherent and streamlined.
I guess thank you, that's helpful. I guess my concern feels strong.
Wonder, will you say wonder a lot?
I wonder. I love wonder. Let's wonder together. Okay. I wonder what just to borrow the word of success, what a successful kind of social media and communication strategy might mean. I think it seems like this is part of an overall instead of the big picture. So maybe I'm being a little bit more microscopic than was intended.
So one of the things, sorry, I know I interrupted. One of the things that the new Director of Communications do is roll out a comprehensive district-wide communication plan. They'll develop it, they'll modify it, they'll roll it out. So part of this is that we didn't want to determine what that would look like before that person was hired, and had the ability to assess what we need, use their expertise, and come up with a plan. So I think you're right, and you're pointing to like, well, what does this actually mean? And part of it is we don't know. We have some ideas, but we really want to empower the person whose job it is after a lengthy job application process. Really good candidates, but a really good person who's hired, that we want to make sure that person is able to help us, guide us.
Great. I'll be more interested in what they think of the position. Part of my own career has a lot to do with kind of branding and what that might mean, but that also just means what are the actual goals? Is a goal, you know, for me, I have a kindergartner right now that's just general communication with parents to increase this like success metric of, you know, are we having more community members at district events? But for a high schooler, what, I mean, that's just a very broad range of what it might mean for all 4 schools. So just more consideration, I suppose. I'm interested
Thank
to
you for
see.
that feedback.
I guess I would love to kind of see, or what I would expect to see under that goal 6, and kind of there's some stuff that I think alludes to it. All those report out methods, I think if this is our strategic plan, I would expect to hear, you know, this is how things are going on the strategic plan at every meeting. I would expect to hear little nuggets all the time at all levels of the district. I would expect to see in the staff push from a principal a nugget about the strategic plan. I would expect to hear in a team meeting in a building a nugget about the strategic plan. And so I think for me, it's at all levels all the time, you know, in every newsletter, there's got to be something about the strategic plan in some way from every building principal every time they send it out. And every superintendent update. And that's just my belief on a strategic plan. If this is truly going to be our roadmap, that's what I would expect to see in here.
Thank you. Great idea.
I would just echo that. I think hearing from the principals as to how their work builds up into this, like making sure that we're staying on the path going forward. I remember in the community planning group, we had the vision of a graduate, and it had the more detailed bullet points. Yeah, I think that would address some of the questions that came up, where it's more specific but still broad enough that it fits within the plan.
I like that point from John and echoed by Joe, that we would hear about this kind of very consistently, and like how what we're doing aligns with the plan, et cetera. I think that that's what I was sort of fumbling after in my thoughts about the budget and how this plays into budgeting. I think if this is sort of what we see our strategy as being, I would expect us to devote a lot of resources to it, or at least to shift what resources we can, or I would expect there to be, I think a strategy is only as good as its execution, and so I would expect sort of things to move to bring alignment on that. So I would expect us to see, like, look, we're spending money and we're using space in this way right now, but we're going to shift it because it doesn't align with our strategic plan. Here's what we're going to do instead, and this does align with our strategic plan. So I guess I would expect to see changes, truthfully. I think that, like, if all we've done with a strategic plan is sort of write down exactly what we're doing now, I'm not sure that was our goal, even though I think there's a lot of things that are going well, and that's worth celebrating. But I think the goal was to get to a different place and have some alignment on that, and I think that then we would expect to see that come through in money and where our resources and by money I also think of buildings. Our resource allocation would shift to align with this.
Very much, and I think also for trimester, semester, down a more at work to work that would.
Thank you.
All right, I kind of want to piggyback. The other kind of goal I'm most curious about, goal 3, create an environment that promotes emotional well-being and student success. Do we kind of have I would be curious to see a bit more, I know this is a bit of a data request, but where we feel like we're starting with this. I definitely think this is a great goal that we are raising people, not, I don't know, regurgitating robots, but the whole raising people, I think this is a great promotion kind of step, and I know this is the trickiest of all things. I mean, my husband is a psychiatrist. This can be the trickiest of all things to measure. But if we can have a better idea of, and that kind of measurement might look a little bit more like getting positive feedback where there hadn't been feedback before, of people are commenting, they are happy this is available or something like that.
Thank you. And, a lot of this goal, it sits with the Director of Student Services. So he's been working with the district mental health team this year of putting stuff together. We have lots of resources within the district, but it's a matter of kind of aligning them and who's using what. So I would imagine within, obviously this is, a lot of it lays within year one, is being able to articulate what are the existing resources, who's accessing, what are the gaps. And then building from there as well.
I think that's great. I would like to just go ahead and positively comment that as a parent of a kindergartner, I just love that there's guidance as something that's already being incorporated, that emotional intelligence is already being incorporated for our youngest students. So I hope that this just continues to launch and launch, that I do think we're starting at a pretty great place comparatively. So that's great.
Anything else? Obviously, if you think of something, always email Amy. You're going to be sending this out to the community at large. There's this QR code for them to respond as well, and collecting all of that, and all of that will get factored in the draft that comes before us, or the revised draft that comes before us in June. Are there any questions?
So I'm just asking for if we could get feedback by Monday afternoon, so we can start compiling that. And I'll be doing a tour of the schools and trying to get in front of as many students and faculty and parents, just to get more eyes on this.
For letting other parents know about this, is there a specific feedback you're hoping to receive, or just like love, hate, ambivalent?
Yeah, like
Ideas,
ideas,
everything.
wonders. Are we missing anything?
Great.
You know, things like that.
And this will be available for other parents?
Yep, I'm going to send
send
it
it
out district-wide tomorrow with the link for feedback. And then on Monday, I believe I have the district-wide PTO meeting, so I will share it with the district-wide PTO as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate.
You, Rev. Appreciate the help. Okay.
All right,
another
I'm
update.
going
Go ahead.
to just give you a few updates. Thank you for that feedback. So I have some great news. We have won the Best Communities in Music Education Award for the second year in a row, which is pretty exciting. So a big thank you to our dedicated students in the music department for their work. And additionally, I want to thank this board for your ongoing support for the arts in our schools. Next, I'd like to give a Take Flight program update. The Aviation Museum, which our partner in Take Flight, has generously provided, you're going to have to help me with this technical piece here, 2 super ultra-wide dual display touch simulators. It's a lot of words for our Take Flight program. This donation is going to enhance our students' learning experience. I want to thank the Aviation Museum and the Take Flight crew for their efforts and contributions to this program this year. So this program has been extremely successful. We are well ahead of our targets for our airplane build. So I would say next fall, we're going to have a plane that's going to be up in the air at the Lebanon airport. So it's really exciting. And these, maybe. Those simulators are very cool. So just an update on the SAU building. On Monday, Tim, John, and I met with a commercial real estate agent who has a lot of experience in the state in converting old school buildings. And we are waiting more information from him. We've given him our plans, our survey details, our cost of our buildings. And once we have that, we'll schedule a meeting with our task force group to review that, to make future recommendations to the school board. So their immediate feedback is that our building is in great shape. in terms of our floors, our ceilings are straight, and they were impressed with the upkeep of our building and the quality of that. And he seemed to have lots of ideas and potentials for that, including just this space outside. Hiring update, we are very close to be fully staffed for next school year, which is great. We have a few open vacancies that we are moving to hire. As I announced earlier, I'm excited to bring on a new Director of Communication and Community Relations, Jack Rooney, who will be starting on July 7th. Jack comes from the Keene Sentinel and has background within the newspaper and a lot of social media there. And I have to say, we had a great group of really strong candidates coming there. So finally, I had given you guys some more legislative information on the table for you. So it is a House Bill 771 update. This is another open enrollment bill that is going through. This bill is supposed to be voted on in the full Senate tomorrow. Also, I've included a letter from our Lyme School Board, who is going to send this letter. I believe they discussed this last night at the meeting. It's being shared out with all the local superintendents. They're going to share it to all the local legislation and the governor, just in opposition of some of this open enrollment information. This bill, as you can tell, it's similar to House Bill 2. One of the pieces that we're trying to get information from the School Board Association with is that there has been rumors that with House Bill 771 is that we could choose to be an open enrollment district. If that is accurate, I think that would be a positive step from that. But obviously, as you can see, even from the Lyme letters, there's just concerns with open enrollment in terms of equity, kind of poaching rural school districts, and funding and fiscal impact as well. So I did clarify, though, I did get the answer because there is some language in House Bill 771 in regards to charter schools. And I was wondering, would a charter school become an open enrollment school, meaning that we'd have to pay charter schools 80% of the tuition? And the School Board Association said they do not see that bill written like that.
I noticed that number, the 80% number, in both this and HB 2.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of them ever expressly state where the other 20% of the money needed to teach the student is supposed to come from?
I guess that would be a receiving district.
The receiving district, the parents?
Just the receiving districts would have to cover that. So the concern would be the cost per pupil is different, right, through all of the state. So depending where the student goes, let's say we have a student that would go to Hanover, their cost per pupil is higher, so they would only get 80% of our tuition, and they would make that up. So and vice versa with any other open enrollment school. So I'm trying to give you guys as much.
If a bunch of students are sent here, but only 80% of the cost per student is sent here,
right? And they
then
could
suddenly
be
our taxpayers are paying an extra fifth of the cost per student, every single student that comes here. And we don't
80% of their.
Only 80% of their tuition, not
Yeah.
our tuition. So it's even more.
It's even, yeah. So
Yeah.
like, none of this makes any fiscal sense.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to defend the bill, but if it costs $20,000 per student to educate here, adding in 2 extra students, for example, doesn't cost us an extra $40,000. Like that's poor math. So it doesn't cost us more to take students in until we get so big we have to add teachers.
But then it suddenly costs a lot more.
Then it,
Yes.
Long-term.
theoretically, yeah. I'm not speaking in favor or against
Yeah,
this
I know
bill.
the
I'm just
cost
we gotta
per-
be
the
sure
cost
our
per
math is
students
correct.
not,
Yeah, or just like if you look at the
made up,
scholarship pool
entirely
for
made up.
our seniors, if there's more kids coming in not from there, the pool is less for
Yeah.
those students.
This overall legislative push for open enrollment, I am fully opposed to. I don't care how they word it. I think overall it will eventually impact our taxpayers. It will eventually severely impact our students and our teachers and the workloads. This can only cascade into a complete disaster, in my opinion. I feel very comfortable commenting on that if we would like to comment on that as a board, or commenting as an individual, that's also fine. But I think that this is not a good faith bill.
You'll find a lot of people arguing against you,
So,
at least in this room.
I just wanted to make sure, these legislations are coming fast and furious, and so as soon as I get them and I can compile and I'm trying to get them to you guys so you guys can stay abreast of this new information that's ever-changing landscape of public education.
and given that this is tomorrow, is the
Yeah, at the full Senate.
if we wanted to, and again, not send somebody down to testify necessarily, but if we wanted to make a statement as a board, we'd have to decide it now and do it now. And we're so good at that, but which is why I appreciate that we have the Lime has done some of the work this time around, but we would have to make that choice.
Do I need a motion? Do we motion at
You can
this
make a
point?
motion. That'd be great.
I motion that we speak as a board in the form of a letter regarding this issue. Is that sufficient? We need to explicitly say that we make that letter now, or is that the motion?
Do you want to model it after this letter?
Love to model our letter after the Lime letter, and if anybody would like to make any alterations to that letter, that should be faster for us to move as a board.
That's a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Layla, second by Tia. I'm sorry, my thing. Jen?
I was going to say, it feels like we ran into this last time, and we kind of need the letter first,
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
right, to make choices,
like
right.
a specific letter before we support or.
Right, so she's saying use the Lime letter
No,
as
I
a
know,
model,
But that's still not the letter we're supporting or not.
unless we make the changes here and agree to them
Yep.
here.
I mean, I guess, like, I think the Lime letter is a very good letter. My opinion is that it does a very good job of stating considerations and questions. And I think it makes a great point. It doesn't take, it urges a pretty thoughtful approach and calls out some very that to me come from.
In our version, we could say that we join the Lime School Board, like in our first line could be different. So we are writing, join the Lime School Board in expressing unanimous agreement, blah, 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 to sort of go on with what they're saying. Be easy enough.
I mean, like, I feel comfortable with the wording of this letter, and I think, and I really brought whoever thought of that, good job.
Lime reached out, and just, we've been all trying to collaborate on these and kind of pull resources, and I think there's a movement, with, especially within the area agreement, to be able to maybe having our boards, they could make a claim together.
I mean, I think it would have been great if we could Ash
On the
write
fly
a letter,
again, yeah.
like, right now, like, with all of us watching him.
There's some
that would
limitations
have
to
been-
Ask GPT.
That would have been great, but
Okay.
I feel like I would be in support of this board joining this letter as it is currently worded. I think we're saying basically the equivalent of join in the letter. I think that if we wanted to make changes to this letter, I would have probably more thoughts,
Okay,
but I don't
Other-
want to do that.
that's fine.
I'm okay with the letter as it's worded.
Okay,
So am I.
okay,
I'm good with the letter as it's worded.
I am too.
okay. Yep, yeah, okay.
Yay.
So then we're just going to revise the first line to say that we're joining Lime Board. They're unanimous, we're unanimous with them. All right, we will fix that.
You need to formally.
Yes, we are,
Okay.
but I just want to make sure I'm clear about what we're doing. All right, so join Lime. All right.
Who is going to submit this?
I can, I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
I'll submit it.
Well, you're the chair, so I figured, but I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
you didn't want me to do it.
I'll submit it. It's easy.
And if you want to send it to me, I can send it, if the board wishes, to the representatives and the senators too.
Yeah.
Lime provided us a list of.
Yeah, say thanks to Lime.
Yes. Thank
Yeah,
Lime.
we appreciate Lime. Okay, so all those in favor of Layla's motion to accept the, join the Lime School Board's letter and send our own. Okay, great, thank you. We'll fix that tonight.
Yeah, and I don't have a report prepared for tonight, but I will give you sort of a roadmap. So we have an end-of-year list representing to Finance and Facilities at our next meeting. At the end of May, I will present to you sort of the budget picture probably through the middle of May, along with an end-of-year list for your to look at. Then in June, I'll give you a presentation through May, and hopefully you'll approve the list. But we're doing pretty well, so we're coming to the end of the year quickly.
What percentage expended are we?
He doesn't have that list
I
in
don't
front of
have
us.
that.
He doesn't know.
Trying to egg me on. I'm trying to make myself only answer things I have answers to in front of my head, like
Yes.
in a court case. Instead, you egg me on. So.
That's it. You can just say, I don't have that information. I don't. That's fine.
I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate me.
Okay.
I've
Don't
been
say
watching
that.
too much Karen Reed.
All right. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So next, we have Director of Academics Engagement and Opportunity and an update on LMS.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Dubois. I'm the Director of Academics Engagement and Opportunity. Rolls right off the tongue. I'm here to provide a brief update about some exciting changes for the Lebanon Middle School schedule for next year. The committee that we convened at the beginning of this year was tasked with looking at the Lebanon Middle School schedule, identifying areas that were working well and potentially areas for improvement. We worked with 2 consultants from Demonstrated Success and brought together a team that included building administrators and faculty, as well as parents and me. And the team worked really, really hard throughout the year to take a good look at what was working and then try to identify what we needed to change. They engaged in a deep data gathering process that included surveys, qualitative data gathering, student shadow days, and then used that information to determine what areas for change emerged as our top priorities. Really at the forefront, what came out was the need for more instructional minutes. We ended up looking carefully at how students spent each minute in their day. And we identified a need for increasing the instructional minutes devoted to core academic areas, changing the alignment of core academic areas to offer future opportunities for cross-curricular collaboration in support of student-centered learning endeavors like project-based learning. And another thing that really came up as a big preference was to embed choice in essential arts classes. For those of you who have younger children who haven't come through this school yet, essential arts is the term we use for non-core academic subjects such as PE and woodshop. FCS is family consumer science, that whole bundle of offerings. And there's a strong desire to embed choice so that students could begin to identify areas where they really want to learn and grow more and have some agency in that process. So Tom's going to walk us through what came out of this. We're really excited about the schedule that was achieved. I cannot tell you how many hours of work it took. And there were feedback opportunities throughout. And the most important thing to me is that the entire schedule committee, including, importantly, the teachers who really need to buy into the schedule, presented this to the faculty and are standing strongly behind it. Tom's going to walk you through some of the highlights, and I'll let him take it from here.
Good evening, I'm Tom Harkins. I'm the principal here at Lebanon Middle School. Some of the things that Karen already mentioned are more instructional time. So our classes this year are 42 minutes. Our core classes next year are all 50 minutes. The back-to-back academic blocks, which provide some flexibility for teachers to do cross-curricular things and project-based activities, project-based learning type of things. So that was a big plus for us. We're moving, this is a big shift that isn't out to the students yet, but it's good, word's getting out slowly. We're going to grade level teams. So right now we have a 5th grade team, a 6th grade team, and 3 mixed 7th and 8th grade teams. We are moving to a 5th, a 6th, a 7th, and an 8th grade team. That's going to be a big deal around here. We have more choice, as Karen mentioned, so some of our EA choice options, I have a long list here. I'll just read a few. Construction techniques with Mr. Schochner in the wood shop. One of our tech ed offerings is going to be digital design with 3D printing and laser CNC, which is like a laser engraver type of thing. For one of our technological tech classes, from clickbait to credibility, understanding media literacy. For the FCS class that Karen mentioned, we have international cuisine and customs, learning to draw with nature, modern art, storytelling through drawing. There's a long list of them. So we're working right now on course descriptions to get to all of you for approval, to get them into the program of studies. So we're planning on getting this information to students here on Friday, elementary schools tomorrow, but all of it is contingent upon program of studies being approved with these updated course descriptions. So we're still working on that, and we're like every day working on this and moving it forward. We're also, our 5th grade model is going to be shifting to a team model, so we'll have 6 teachers in the 5th grade next year because we have a large cohort coming through. So there'll be 3 teams of 2, so a STEM teacher paired with a humanities teacher, so those students will go back and forth between those 2 teachers throughout the day, and then moving about the building for their EAs. Those were my kind of highlights, but again, I'll just kind of second what Karen said. We're all very excited. People are pumped, like the EAs were, once I told them about this choice option thing, they just started like, well, can I build a shed? Can I do this and that? And you know, all these great ideas, which some of them we had to kind of peel back on just for logistics sake, but just people are really excited about this schedule moving forward. That's all I've got. Anybody questions?
Thanks. Yeah, does anybody have any questions for?
Okay.
Tom, how are you communicating to parents?
Well, this letter that's not in a, I thought it was, I've thought this was finalized about 8 or 9 times now, but we're working on it. We're going to send this letter out. So we're going to have an assembly with the kids on Friday. As soon as that assembly's over, it's going to go out, and there's actually a 5th grade, a 6th, a 7th, and an 8th, because there's some required courses for each grade, and then the choice options are different for each grade. Send this letter out. Well, there's a whole other letter to explain kind of the overall thing. This letter will give more in the details, so those will all kind of go out simultaneously. One for everybody, and then grade level. And we're asking parents to, or families to sign off on the choices that the kids make to make sure we don't have, to make sure we have some sort of agreement and consensus with what the priorities of that family are.
So when will we, because we need to approve the updates to the program study, those descriptions?
As soon as we possibly can, because we need to build this schedule, so I don't know.
I think for the May 28th meeting, or?
That is ambitious but lovely. I mean,
I know they fall within like the
categories.
Tech, yeah, like we're not creating for there, it's just.
Yeah, they're all within the categories, and I've asked the EA teachers, I just asked them yesterday, like, we got to this point, and then in speaking with Karen, I was like, oh shoot, we need to get them approved. So it's like, literally like, any moment I get, I'm working on this, and then I've sent that request out to the EAs to get them to me as soon as they can. I didn't give them a deadline, but if we're shooting, so that would be the 21st, so what's that, next Wednesday? I mean, they could probably pull it together.
Okay.
I mean, they know their stuff, so it shouldn't take all that long. But
It's exciting, I think the students are gonna love it with some of that new innovative.
Oh, yeah.
John has some questions.
Yes.
Are we sure we want to do this with this timeline? I don't know communication and how this is taken by the community.
Are we sure we want to do what? Change the schedule?
You're talking about a lot of things in the last 5 minutes, and I don't think people know what's coming, and that's concerning. How are you going to ensure that this, I guess what I'm saying is I have a lot of questions, and I'm not going to ask them because I think they get into the weeds how you run a building. But are we sure that we are ready to communicate that middle school families are ready to roll? Because
I
school
think
is
so.
over in less than 30 days. Got a lot of choices, it sounds like, that kids are going to be making with families.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think we're ready. There's a lot, as you very well know, that's going to go into this logistics-wise and all that, but we're metaphorically and physically rolling up our sleeves and like we're digging in and we're ready to roll. So it's going to be a lot, but we're excited about it. We think it's going to go over well. So I think so. You agree?
Yeah, and I'll just say, one of the affordances of a choice is that students get to make another one after the first one's over. So if we're asking them to indicate a preference for 10 out of 30 options, they'll probably get one of those 10. If they don't, there's another trimester right around the corner. So I'm optimistic that I'm sure there'll be bumps in the road in the first year, but we're leaning into information from other districts that do this sort of embedded choice, and it is actually just one period out of their day. So it may feel like a seismic change, but I think, Jen, you're also referring to, there's some other changes. We're shifting the 5th grade model and moving from teaming in 7th and 8th to 7th and 8th. The data we collected indicated that families in particular want to see those changes. So I actually think they'll be welcome, and I think it'll feel like a relief. We feel totally confident about the 5th grade pivoting to teaming in a really positive way, and we have some structures built for them to do some teamwork this summer to make sure that that's a smooth transition. Overall, I think these are going to be well-received changes based on the information we got during this process.
I can share a little a personal perspective. I have some buddies. I think that having that choice is a really cool thing. So I
Thank you.
Any other questions, observations, Tom and Karen?
Tom, are you going to communicate with the rising 5th grade parents about the change in the model, that the ones that, rising 4th graders to 5th
Yes.
graders? Yeah.
Yep.
So.
We plan on doing that.
Okay. Yeah. And maybe, may consider a family forum just to talk to you and do that. So I applaud you for the work that you've done leading this through this year. There's no perfect schedule ever, or if there would be, we'd all use it. But your team has done a terrific job in being able to look at the data and make concessions, and I think it's a really student-focused schedule.
Yep.
Again, I think just the communication piece will be key to the families.
Okay, thank you
All right.
very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. That brings us to new business. So we have an update from Fresh Picks.
So I asked Tim just to update you. We received an email from Fresh Picks, which is our food provider.
Yeah, just a real simple email we got saying that Fresh Picks is removing a list of artificial dyes from the menu for next year. It will mean, read it. It will mean that there'll be some choices that probably aren't available. It's just weird, like drinks that are multicolored that are a big hit. I don't know if those are artificial dyes or not. But they're looking for substitutes. Kids will adapt, but I think it's good.
Just so funny. I'm going back to visit my family in Canada next week, and I'm taking a box of American Fruit Loops.
Right.
Because
they're more
someone
colorful.
saw one of the kids back there saw the video where they're comparing the American Fruit Loops and the Canadian Fruit Loops, and now they have to do it. So
Well, maybe you should bring back a truckload of stuff that doesn't have artificial dyes in it for our lunchroom next year.
Yeah, I'll bring some for snacks.
Tractor
for the,
trailer.
Okay, great.
I'll bring some
I mean,
for the whole
that sounds
class.
good. Does anybody have any questions about the removal of dyes? Okay. I mean,
Broken clocks twice a day. You know how it
okay,
is.
then we're moving on to the acknowledgement of a $500 ExxonMobil grant.
For the last few years, we've been receiving a $500 ExxonMobil grant. I spoke with the principal and just figure out who applied for this as it's been coming year after year. I'm still trying to find that information, but this money goes into the student account, and I would like to thank the ExxonMobil Group for this generous donation.
Great. We would also like to thank them. We appreciate ongoing donations especially, so we're grateful to them, and to whomever applied for the grant. Yay. Okay. Legislative update. Another legislative update. Proposed
Sure.
SB 54.
Yes, I was able to get this in the packet in time as it came forward, so I wanted to make you aware. I believe this is in the Committee for Criminal Justice, where they're suggesting that we do firearms training in public schools starting January 1st, 2026, and it talks and outlines within this law about what's appropriate for each grade level, and it would be 1 hour, a minimum of 1 hour per year, and that we would have to do a summer report to the Department of Education about how many students were trained in firearm safety. So I'm not sure, it was on a ought to pass, I believe. So I'm not sure what the next step it is, but it's through the committee process. So I just wanted to make everyone aware.
I was looking through this, and it doesn't seem to explain who's going to pay instructors to come to the school and do this.
Yeah, there's no fiscal note, so it's sort of be an unfunded mandate.
Another unfunded mandate. Joy. Great. This is what we're spending our money on.
And yeah, I'm not sure or how we would train our educators to deliver this information.
Will we be in control of what is and isn't taught?
I think there are some guidelines, so K to 5, focusing on avoidance and reporting. Students grade 6 or 12, instruction to include basic firearm mechanics, safety handling principles, secure storage practices, and the overview of state and federal firearms laws.
So we could add in like important facts like half of all gun deaths in America are self-inflicted and can be reduced by not having a firearm in your home?
Like we have some layup.
Yep, I think we
leeway.
just have to have that minimum piece of that. So, and it would be, which is, it's going to be mandatory unless a parent opts out of that. So we'll have to kind of think about.
Are we going to have to
how to do
provide
that.
2 weeks' notice? Same way
I
we
think
do
we'd
with
have
learning
to
about
put
gender?
it, yeah, we're going to have to put it within their curriculum. So they suggested health, physical education, or civics curriculum.
Civics.
Another
I think I like that
question
best.
I have is, we have a policy that says that we do not allow firearms on campus.
Correct.
Already have this policy on the books, so it's already in direct opposition to state law, but we have this policy.
Yeah, I mean, it was concerning to me where they said that we could have dummy firearms, which is concerning, just that a lot of incidents with kids all across the country bringing dummy weapons in. And
So since this has already been through committee to the full Senate?
yeah.
Are they also doing this tomorrow?
I don't believe this is on the agenda for tomorrow.
This seems like something appropriate that perhaps the legislative committee can write a draft and we can discuss it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I'll try to dig to see where it's at, when it's scheduled.
Yeah, I mean, I guess give the legislative committee a little bit of guidance. I oppose this for multiple reasons, not least of which is its unfunded mandate, but I also oppose it because it violates our own policy and because it, starting with kindergarten,
Although I do think what they're training the kindergartens to do is if you find a gun, tell an adult and don't touch it, which I think doesn't require an hour.
No, but I think that message, I would like that message to go all the way through. I mean, I think that's a more important message than here's how you operate a firearm.
Yeah.
To me.
Hopefully this gets at what you're saying. It does say shall not include live firearms or ammunition in the classrooms.
From K through 5, right? But then in 6 through 12.
Then it's mechanics, and
Right.
I
all
do
arsons need to know mechanics. of a gun.
It says for everything.
Firearm safety training shall not include live firearms.
Right.
But, you know, for example, I've done pediatrician appointments at Dartmouth Hitchcock, and the question on the surveys always says, you know, do you have a firearm? Do you know how to lock up your firearm? You know, that doesn't really seem to be what this is. This seems to be a very deep level of awareness that is also taking away quite a bit of control from parents if the overall message is not just, if you see a gun or a weapon, don't touch it. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this spirals quite a bit, including when we actually do have such a societal issue with gun violence and in schools, so.
I think the point is going to be made by whoever's sponsoring, whoever's through, that it's a pretty direct corollary to sex education, and that the arguments that can be made against it are the same arguments against sex education. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm stating that that's what the argument is, that, well, you know, we don't want people to do this, therefore we shouldn't teach them anything about it, let the parents do that. So I think that if we're inclined to oppose this, then
We best do it in a way that doesn't also oppose sex education.
I think that it would be wise to sort of to thread that, be careful about what we are, ways that we oppose things. And I think that I guess I read this and there's all kinds of things we could say about it. I guess that, like, the unfunded mandate is telling that we aren't equipped for this. The content is, at least as my reading of it, content is less objectionable in the specific. I'm sort of like, believe that this matter, teaching kids to avoid firearms, is a lesson they may not be getting anywhere else right now, so that's one piece. I don't know, I'm struggling, but I am trying to say that, like, I think this is.
So I think sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I think there are, as with all of these things, there are multiple sides. I mean, I think if we are going to task our legislative committee to write a letter, they can come up with it with multiple different arguments. We can either accept the letter or not accept the letter or revise it as we.
But I think we're trying to give them a little bit of guidance.
Right.
And I think that, like, in having a discussion about that now, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think I am expressing, like, a little concern that simply, if we sort of just say, OMG, firearm is in a, you know, bill.
I don't think that's what anybody is suggesting. I think people have suggested different objections that they are launching. You are suggesting counter objectives to those, which is fine. But I think no one has said, like, we just hate this because it's guns. I think people are saying because of parents, because of unfunded mandate, because of parent control, because of our own policies. Like, these are things people have just brought up. So
okay, but I
don't think that's what
some of those are not accurate. So, for example, our policy does not actually, it prevents live firearms from being property. This doesn't suggest that. That wouldn't be a wise counter argument.
But our policy also prohibits anything that looks gun-like. So dummy firearms are also.
All this says is that it may incorporate training aids, such as dummy firearms. It doesn't specify that you have to bring. So I think that if we're, like.
Okay. You all go ahead. Joe.
I was going to say, the other thing that, reading here, it does on the, whatever it is, the first page, 193L4, it does say that the Department of Education, in consultation, blah, 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 will develop and adopt standardized firearms safety training, and then say the department shall provide curricular material to each school district at no cost to the district. So it seems like the state is creating their own curriculum that they would offer for free, which I assume is kind of their goal. And then it would be up to us to, if this goes through, to create our own way of doing it if we so choose, but that just adding that piece in there.
I just have a general question. When I was in Lebanon, we did a program called DARE. And part of that program, I know, I'm dating myself.
The war on drugs. This is your brain on drugs.
All right. You want to get
So part of that was surrounding, like, gun safety. If you found a gun, what you do, all that stuff. Are we not doing?
I think DARE was ended like 10 or 15
It was
years
actually
ago.
counterproductive and rates went up.
Bad.
Yeah,
Got it.
it was
Thank
ended
you.
years ago.
They made it cool.
Okay, so legislative people, do you feel like you have enough information to go forward?
I saw you taking notes. You got the notes?
I've jotted down notes of, I think we have enough to make a letter if someone feels like something's missing, or if they have a thought, you can shoot an email.
Yes, yeah.
And we would just want to have it the Friday before, to Amy, the Friday before the meeting, so that it can go in to the packet and people have enough time to look at it in advance.
If you want me to look up anything in what are, like, what, in ways that it might violate our policies to have this, let me know and I'll
Yeah.
look.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, policy section. We got a bunch of motions. for
Two policy sections this time. First and second readings.
Yes.
So the first, I almost feel like we should do the second readings first because we're already familiar with those. But first reading policies, let's see, we've got class size, parent and family engagement under Title I. Actually, maybe it would be best if, Karen, would you be interested in
Hi.
would you be interested in coming up and talking about the family engagement under Title I policy stuff for a moment? Would that be okay?
KB.
Let's see. How to simplify this.
Right.
There's a very hardworking group of people at the state in charge of Title I compliance. They have an understanding of the word policy that may differ from our understanding of the word policy. Their reading of Title I requirements is that we must have a district and building-specific policy in place regarding family engagement. Actually, what they're asking for is a procedure, and what we'll be doing here is crafting a policy with procedures attached to it that meet that requirement. Was that a
Yeah. That's
succinct
good.
way of explaining?
It's a very diplomatic one too, and I'm glad I had you do it instead of me.
Okay.
So what we've done is we've created a shell policy called KB that has some language in it that points to one that we're going to be reauthorizing every year, KBR. And KBR is going to be done
Over the summer by,
some of the families that are involved in.
it's, you know what? I'm going to a session about family engagement policy on Wednesday of next week.
Perfect.
After which we will decide on a plan to move forward with this. We have the required family engagement documents. They're just not, the NHED has come out with additional requirements that we need to embed. So by the end of the summer, we'll have those attachments for you.
And so almost all of this language is taken directly from the state, and the idea is that these policies would, this R-R policy would be tweaked every year, and we are authorized by us every year on or before November the 1st.
Anything else?
So do you want to just, does anybody?
I just wanted a primer for
Yep.
everybody in case somebody had. Does anyone have any questions about any of the first reading policies?
So I will say one thing that we talked about in policy, and then I went back and read the minutes from Finance and Facilities that clarifies the question that we had. So in policy BDER, we were confused about the request for a review and approve manifests. So the reason that, in the policy, in the F&F committee
Yes.
minutes, it said this was something that you had suggested because it's something our auditors are asking for. So can you explain to me exactly what they're asking for?
So, and it doesn't necessarily need to be finance and facility committee members, but when the bills are paid or payroll is paid, there's a manifest of everything that's being paid in there. And according to actually New Hampshire law, that everything that's gonna be paid is supposed to be approved by 2 members of the board before it's paid. The auditors have, in other districts predating COVID, it was kind of a wink and a nod. You get them signed as soon as you can because it's hard to get something to sign ahead of time. But since COVID, we went to an email system of approval, which allows it at least in real time for you to see what's going to be paid at when the time it's being paid. So whether it be 2 people from finance facilities or 2 members of the board, 2 people need to look at the manifest, one for payroll, one for AP. Jess would point out that a lot of times AP trickles out, but they need to be approved pretty promptly as to when the payroll cycle is. It's been F&F for as long as I've been here, but it doesn't actually say that, which is why I requested that.
Well, but it's not actually F&F because it's the 2 people that we approve who just happen to be on F&F.
Okay, that's
So
fine, yeah.
we approve them. So when we did our
I've
big.
commingled them in mind. Yeah.
Right. So when we do our approval of the committee assignments, on that sheet is 2 people are designated to approve manifests. In the past, they have often been on F&F, but that has not been the case always. It's just that the board approves 2 people. And before, it was 2 people who had a lot more flexibility in their schedules because this was something that had to be happening in real time, right, without email. Now it's email, so it's a lot more simple. So we do that. We approve them as part of that committee assignment thing. So one of the things that I think we need to do is not necessarily change this, but change the policy that is, I forget the name, like DK, right, that to just state that explicitly. So that's, but we didn't know that in policy, so like, what is this question? But that is I think the response. So we leave it the way it is for policy, for the descriptions of what happens in the committees, and then we need to change DK to note that we are setting apart 2 people from the board to sign these manifests.
Do we need to set apart, do we need to change DK? I thought DK already says that.
It might. We just need to look at it.
Yeah,
so
I'm
just
pretty
make sure
DK
that
already says we are.
And that's fine. We
supposed
just need to make sure
authorize
it like
2 people to
matches
do
our
that.
matches our practice. And
Yeah,
that
okay.
again, I don't think we have to change necessarily, but we just need to look at it and make sure.
So then do we need, I guess then what does review approved manifests mean? I think we were sort of, when we talked about it, like,
Well, the reason I brought it up is at least when I read 4 the way it is now, it looks like they're already approved and finance facilities is reviewing them, where what I was looking, I mean, and that can happen, but what I was looking for is when I send it to you, they're not approved, these 2 people, they're not approved. The job I asked them to do is look them over and say approved. John does it, approved.
Right.
Or, hey, what is this Netflix? So the people who do it are very good at sort of actually looking at it. But when I read review of approved manifests, I thought that, to me, that means they're already approved and you're looking them over as a committee, which can happen, but that's not what I thought was the intent. That's why I asked.
well, I think that was not, we had that discussion, and I think that was not really our understanding, that we were meant to just look at approved manifests, but that instead we were and approved manifests. So I think that, like, if it's fine if we're going to switch to the other thing, but then I don't know why
Right.
why we would leave for where it is if, like,
We don't need it. Yeah, I mean, I think, so I guess the question is, you just need to clarify that with the auditors. Like, if we have this delineated somewhere else in another policy, we're not doing this because we've never done that, is that fine?
I mean, I can ask them, but what they look for is evidence that 2 board members have
Yeah,
approved.
which will be in
reviewed
the
and
other
approved.
policy, yeah.
That's what they care about.
Yeah, okay. So we just need to make that more explicit. And you can look at that, Ash, and see
Yeah.
how we're articulating that or not.
Yeah, and.
Not right this second, but
is there any reason to not have it sit with members of the finance?
I mean, it has been often people who are available, people who have done it before, people who are interested in numbers. Like, I wouldn't want to say, like, it has to be someone in F&F because we don't know who's in F&F from year to year, and we don't know their availability, and we don't know their level of engagement and going in. So I wouldn't necessarily say that. Okay, you look like you're going to say something. That's why I would just to leave it flexible for depending on the makeup of the board. Okay, that was my only.
Policy DK reads, the district treasurer must authorize all payments of district funds. However, under RSA 19723A, the treasurer shall authorize any payment upon orders of 2 or more members of the school board, whom a majority of the board has empowered to authorize payments. So that also means that we, as a board, must vote to authorize
We do,
them
because
to do.
they're part of our package of
Yeah.
things.
Did we do that this year?
Yes?
Oh, okay.
Just point of clarification, because I have been one of the two people who had this. It was not done that way when I first, just so that we know how it's been working. Like, it has not been that when the committee assignments were made, that person was always, like, those have been sort of separate processes. Like, I was
No,
just.
they were last year and the year before. So when I've been a chair, they've been in the same package. Every
So
time we
did-
approve
It
it,
did transition, not, when I was given that role, it happened not at the time that the committee assignments were made. Did not go back and change that sheet.
I mean, I'm looking at it, changed, so I don't know when that change happened.
It happened mid-cycle because it was, Stephen
Oh,
and
'cause he
MJ
left.
were the people who
Okay,
were originally.
so then we need to,
So I'm just
in
saying-
that case, we would have needed to reapprove
Right,
because
so
that had changed,
I
yeah.
think the concern would just be that if it's lumped in with approving that tape, that like document,
changes,
it could
approve.
change.
Yep,
And I
need
think
to
it might be
reapprove.
easy to lose sight of that, so you may want to, like, if, you may want to call it out separately, or something.
Well, and we can put it, there's a document now that is like telling chair, the next chair, the things that need to happen on a regular basis, and the things to look out for, so that will be one of the things that we can add to that, so then they're aware of it going
Yeah,
forward.
because it wasn't
Yeah.
told to me as like, here's a thing that anyone on the board can do. It was told to me as, you're the only other person on the F&F committee, therefore you have to do. And so I think that, like,
There's a communication problem, that makes sense, we can fix that, it's a good point. Do you have any other, Ash, anything else you want to say about these first readings?
About the first ones, yeah, there's a couple of changes I wanted to make to IIB,
All right?
which is the class size one. This is the one that we have inserted some language regarding should open enrollment come into effect, so we would have a backstop in terms of how large the class sizes can get according to our policies. I don't know whether or not the school choice policies are going to override that or not, but it's nice to have that in there. I did take out a couple of words because it did say the superintendent or designee shall also ensure that class sizes do not exceed the following, and then I had number of students or per teacher or fewer. The or fewer needed to go. That didn't make much sense in a to exceed number. Also, I believe the new number for number 6, standards is set by the state, is ED 306.14, and so I have changed that as well.
Okay.
And again, all of these may need to be revisited. Amy, do we know when NHSBA is going to get us that packet?
They said it's coming any day now.
I
That
know,
was a
I was
week
going
ago.
to say in like mid-April, it was 3 weeks.
I'm worried it's going to come late past our June meeting, and they're going to come into effect July 1, but we'll cross that bridge. when we-
Romy, I want to meet with you after this to schedule a time to work on the
Sure.
policy agenda in second.
Just as an outsider, non-educator, but it looks, as I read this, and sometimes I read things, maybe many times I read things wrong, it looks like the new class sizes for kindergarten, grades 1 and 2, et cetera, are conditional on the New Hampshire state government bringing into effect mandatory open enrollment.
Yes.
So what if they don't bring in that mandatory open?
Yeah, so that was
If-
going to be
if
my
they-
question.
If they don't, so the way this is currently worded is that the superintendent sets the boards, the class sizes, by taking these following things into account. And so, we don't have a set class size number right now, and we haven't needed one. But we felt that if they did bring in a open enrollment scenario, we would need to have something in writing to fall back on, saying, okay, but no more than this. We don't see the need to set those limits in the absence of the open enrollment.
We do have a limit. Stuff that's in red is what the limit is now according to policy.
That's what the state,
Oh, so number 6 says standards
Those
as
are the
set by
state
the
standards,
state.
but those are written in our policy, right?
right, but we're changing that.
We're
We're changing those no matter what.
so the reason we crossed those out The reason why we cross those out is simply because those are standards for the state that change
They're going
according
up
to
to
whatever
32 or
306.
something like
So
that.
just by not spelling them out, it just makes it easier. We don't have to keep redoing our policy. It will automatically change with whatever the change is in the 306s.
Well, and I think my question is more about, are we comfortable with that and not having class sizes?
That is fair.
And
This is a very conservative approach.
And
You
I-
can go for something more if you want.
And that's kind of what my question is. Do we want to continue to have a class size of, 20 or less in kindergarten currently until the state takes action or not? Because we're leaving it up to Amy, and as a board, do we want to do that or not? Kind of the question. This is one of those policies that kind of comes around. I'm a bit frustrated that my high schooler has 27 kids in a class, right? And so, those are the types of things that are allowed to happen if we don't have caps. And so, by leaving it this way, I'm just saying there is some exposure. That's all.
I'm sorry, I don't think I understand what you meant, John. Tell me if I'm repeating this back correctly.
So basically,
You would prefer to have a cap, not a cap provision according to open enrollment, is that correct?
correct. That's my opinion, and I have that opinion for a number of different reasons. My feeling is that 27 kids in a class is unacceptable, and we have that right now in our district. So, when you have policies like this and leave it that open, we're okay with that, but personally, I'm not. I think this creates some exposure, that's all.
Or maintains one.
Or, yeah, either way you look at it.
Right, I think it maintains, because before, we followed the state standard, and we capped it at 30, so.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that. I think
Right.
it should be lower. And so
Right, I
that's
mean,
just my
I-
opinion.
No,
right?
I
That's
mean-
what I'm trying to say.
I mean,
And
I
so,
think
yeah.
the stuff that we put in green, it could be our caps, which it's written kind of for open enrollment, so it would be 18.
So you're saying we could change the language to say this, depending on open enrollment, our goal.
You could have, so
regardless.
18,
Yeah, I could
20.
easily rewrite this to make it so that those are our
22, and
caps.
25.
Yeah, and-
18, 20, 22, and 25 be our caps.
Yeah, as long as we pass it after the year's over, because it would cause a little chaos
Right, 'cause we
this
do
year.
it right
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is probably in all effort, like if a student comes into the high school and there's 25, can they not take the class, or would we put them at 26? I mean, I think there's got to be some language in there, provisions but I don't think we should schedule at 27.
Correct. I agree.
Okay, so what we'll do is...
Take it out.
We're not gonna, I don't think we're gonna run this for first reading at this meeting. What we'll do is I can draft some language and we'll do first reading again at the next meeting. Is that okay with everybody? Does that timeline work, Amy?
Yeah, because then second reading would be after school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna pull IIB out of this one. We're gonna table, so move that we table.
So you haven't made a motion yet about these, so you don't have to, I mean, you can move, you're tabling this one.
Yeah, just
go
this
ahead.
one. We're gonna table policy IIB until the next regular meeting of the school board.
Okay, got a motion?
Second?
Second by Tia, or first, sorry. All right, any more discussion about that? All right, all those in favor? Great, excellent.
Cool, excellent points, everybody.
Then we need a motion on the other ones.
Yeah. Okay, so I move that for items 11A 2 through 6. Does anyone have any other questions about the rest of those policies? Then for items 11A 2 through 6, the board accepts them and moves them to second reading.
Okay, motion second by Tia. Any additional discussion of those?
I just have one question
Okay.
on IHAE. Is that a new policy?
That is a new policy.
And does that have implications for the high school program of studies?
I believe it does, yes.
And so they need to be aware.
They
that
they
we're-
are. They've been,
Yep.
it's been made in conjunction with high school, or even policy. So, but yes, we would need to update program and reflect it.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
All right, all those in favor of moving policy section A 2 through 6 on to second reading? Great, okay.
Does anyone have any questions regarding any of the second reading policies? IJOA R1 through 3, GBEBE, and GJFAB.
And we already talked about GGFAB, we're just,
Did-
yeah,
Moving it second, this is second reading.
yeah.
Make a
Question?
motion?
Someone make a motion?
Okay, I move that policies listed in the agenda under 11B 1 through 5 be accepted by the board.
Yep, I'll second.
I'll accept. All right, motion by Richards, acceptance. Second by John. Any additional discussion of these? All right, all those in favor? Great. Let's see, that moves us to back to public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? Seeing none, is there any online?
There's none online.
Okay, we'll close public comment. Committee updates. Finance and Facilities met on April 21st, which was before our last meeting, right? We talked about it. Policy Committee met on May 5th. We've already talked about all of this. Next meeting is June 2nd. Sorry, next meeting of Finance and Facilities is Monday, May 19th. Next meeting of Policy is June 2nd. EC met on May 8th. We want to say anything about that?
Yeah, we discussed the LMS changes that Principal Harkins had presented, and also what Nora presented about the proposed adjustments from the Student Council.
And we talked about counseling and
Counseling and Alma and the transcripts.
transcripts and report cards.
Yep.
Okay, and the next meeting is September 11th at 12 PNN. Their next meeting will be June 2nd, which I'm assuming is just to get the lay of the land.
Yeah, we created an agenda to elect a chair, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, perfect. Student Wellness Advisory Committee met on May 7th.
We discussed a couple different things. Probably the partner, Alice, wellness, that to
Great. HACTC met on March 12th. We've already talked about that. And the next meeting is May 6th? No, they met on May 6th. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we just
barely met.
We
Go
just
ahead.
met. It
Tell
was
me.
No, it was lovely. We had presentations by many of the students and who went through the things that they had learned over the last couple of years and reaffirmed what an amazing program and how great it is that we have the ability to do it. I am so impressed.
Great.
Consistently impressed.
Great. All right, Area Committee will meet on May 20th at 6 p.m. at Grantham. The School District City Task Force will meet on May 22nd at 6 p.m. at City Hall.
I think it's changed. Remember, they asked
Yes.
us to
Oh,
push
29th.
that back to the 29th.
The 29th. I apologize. All right. And the Housing Task Force, your next meeting is on May 19th. Everything met since last.
Gave an update
Yeah.
at the last meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Future agenda items, board member recommendations or questions. Just as an aside, on May 28th, we will be getting a presentation about the federal grants, our reliance on federal grants and how much of our budget that constitutes, in advance of discussing the general assurances. Are there other agenda items, recommendations, or questions?
Does that federal grants presentation include any kind of thought or update when it comes to the free and reduced lunch being gone, or a plan for that kind of hole that's coming up?
It'll be a presentation of all the federal money we get, including,
Okay,
So
thank
we
you.
know what would happen if it,
Great, thank you.
okay.
Just clarifying that
Yeah.
the May 29th meeting, the school task force, is that the joint meeting of the entire board? And
Nope,
Nope. They
they're
have a
going to do
new-
that after a new city manager is set.
Okay, so that's not for everybody this
No,
time?
no.
Okay.
That was my only question. Acting?
Oh, it's someone from the company that got doing this.
Oh.
And he's going to be acting city. So it's very much a skeleton crew.
No, that's okay. That's
Okay.
He did work in Enfield.
Yeah, Devin
here
Lemon.
during their last job search.
Okay.
And
oh, that's right. Okay.
I just saw the update. They have closed the application window, and they have now invited some candidates to submit essay on certain.
For them, I don't know.
That person.
He's setting the, I mean, we're doing it with, he and Amy are working together to create the agenda. Yep.
It's a valid question because he's not doing all the boards and committees that Sean
Right.
was doing.
But he is doing this one, so.
Yep. I know we had to change the meeting because the mayor wants to be at the meeting and
Oh, okay.
could not be on the meeting on the 22nd.
Okay, so important dates and district announcements. Our next school board meeting is May 28th here at 6:30 p.m. LHS graduation is at June 5th. You have not probably received an invitation to this yet, but you are invited to come to this as board members. They'll send out an invitation and let you know if you'd like to come. And then there'll be another school board meeting on June 11th, which will be the presentation of the revised draft of the strategic plan. And our last regularly scheduled meeting will happen after that, which is when we'll do board goals. Anything else? All right, I need a motion. Oh, we're going to do, sorry, I forgot. We cannot adjourn yet. We are going into non-public briefly. So I will. Okay, so we're going, actually, if it's, well, yeah, we're going into non-public, and it is for a reason about negotiations, which is 91A3 to, done. Or
A.
A.
I think, yeah.
Okay, it's under A. Okay, so 91A3 to A. Thanks. All right, so we will adjourn for now, and we will go into non-public, and we will come back at the end. A motion to, that's right, we need a motion to go into, and it has to be roll call, I forget. Yeah, okay, so Jessica makes a motion to go into non-public. Can I get a second? Second by Richard. Kevin? Oh, darn, sorry. But you can say yes. You can be the first for agree to roll call.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jessica?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Tia?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
So, Carrie?
Yes.
Layla?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, we'll adjourn to the room.
John?